Hello and welcome back to the Joyful Soul Creates. Charlotte here, and today I'm creating with the Love From Lizi July card kit, and I'm going to make a set of 4 cards with ink blended backgrounds, and I'm kind of making like a spotlight or glow effect in the background. These cards were inspired by the tassels that came in the card kit, and I wanted to use them as dresses on some of the stamped images, and I'm going to start by creating an ink blended background for each that coordinates with one of the colours of the tassels. So for the first one, I'm using Fired Brick Distress Oxide as my background colour. This will match of course with the red tassel, and I'm starting with my colour more heavily in the centre and then fading out to white as I get towards the edges. For all of my ink blending, I worked out where I wanted it because I wanted it to be more behind the head and torso of my image than behind the tassel. So it's kind of centrally but shifted upwards a bit. After I'd finished my red background, I'm going to move on to the orange one, and this time I'm using Spiced Marmalade, but it's not a Distress Oxide, it's a regular Distress ink. I thought as part of this video I would show a little bit about how different inks blend, so each of the inks I'm using is a different kind. I found the Distress ink easier to blend out to white than I did the Distress Oxide. Actually, the Distress Oxide was the most difficult of them, although I was quite happy with how they all turned out, so there's not really much in it. For my next background, I'm going to be using Catherine Pooler ink, and this is in Limoncello. Again, starting at the centre area and working my way out to white, and I'm using just normal round ink blending tools for this. You can use whichever kind of ink blending tool you prefer, whether that's brushes or these foams or something else, whatever you have. The final colour I'm using is Green Apple, which is a Hero Arts ink. This is from the Pineapple Cube set, and this is a nice bright green, and this will go with the darker green of the tassels. The yellow background is going to go with the lighter green tassel because I didn't have a light green I wanted to use for that, so I thought I'd use yellow instead. Having completed all my backgrounds, I'm going to move on to colouring in my images. I've stamped out 4 of the back-facing images from the stamp set using MFT Black Licorice Hybrid ink, which is my go-to ink for alcohol marker colouring. And then I'm going to use my Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers to colour in all the images, and you can see the caps on screen for the colours that I have used. I decided to do each of the girls a different skin colour, and they're also each going to have different hair colours, so I played around with different colour combinations for this. My first one I did very light skin tone, and my second one much darker, and then just tried a couple of different combinations for the other 2 until I was happy with all of them. And with all of them I did my shading as I most often do, which is that the shadows are on the left hand side and the light is coming from the top right. Next I moved on to colouring their hair, and I'm again giving them all different hair colours. So I use yellows and oranges to create blonde hair for one of my girls. The next one I did brown with a hint of red. The red didn't blend out quite as much as I would have liked, so I went over it quite a lot with my lightest tone to blend it out. And then that actually knocked the contrast back a bit too much. So when I was partway through doing the third girl who has dark brown hair, I actually went back to the second girl and added in some darker shades just to increase the contrast on her hair and give it a bit more dimension. My third girl, I'm going to do very dark brown hair. I wanted to give her black hair, but actually the pens I have available to me, I don't have any shades that would work for black hair, so I went with dark brown instead. I then decided which tassel I wanted with which girl and coloured their little bikinis to match their tassels. And once I had finished colouring them, I die cut them out with the coordinating dies and checked how they looked on the card bases, and also snipped away the tops of those tassels ready for using to be dresses for them. Once I had checked the positioning, I decided I would also add my sentiment, and I'm going to add the same sentiment to all 4 cards cards in the same place on all 4 cards just for quickness. So I'm using my Misty to make this really easy. I can just swap in the next card base after I've finished one and work through all of them quite quickly. And I stamped my sentiment with VersaFine Onyx Black ink, which will give me a nice crisp black impression for that sentiment. As the tassels are fairly dimensional, I wanted to pop the girls up so that they fit with the tassels a bit better and look a little bit more cohesive. So I added foam squares. These are the foam squares that came in the kit. I added them behind, and I actually did a double layer of foam squares to get the depth that I wanted. In order to be able to get the girls lined up nicely with their skirts, I did have to trim away their legs. So when I was colouring this in, I actually didn't really need to colour in the lower halves of their bodies. And by trimming them away, I'll be able to get them adhered nicely lined up so that it looks like the bodies and the tassels actually do belong together to make one figure. I'll remove the backing from my foam squares and adhere the top portion of my girl into place. And then I'm going to use my hot glue gun to glue the tassel down, just because I want to make sure that it's really going to stick properly in place. So I put that hot glue just behind the seam on the top of that tassel, and I'll press it into place, lined up with the girl's body. And then as a final touch for each card, I'm going to add some Nouveau drops. So for this red one, I'm using Strawberry Coulis Jewel drops. And then I use actually a different kind of drop for each of the other cards. So the green one has glow in the dark drops in, I believe it's Sour Apple. I used yellow glitter drops on the girl with the light green skirt, and then I used the orange, I believe it's Ripe Pumpkin, on the girl with the orangey yellow skirt. And I will have all the links for the products I have used down below in the description box with the proper names in case I've misremembered anything, so you can find them all there. Some of the links there are affiliate links, so if you do decide to buy with them, then thank you very much for your support. And here is a final look at the finished cards. These were quite easy to make. The ink blending did take a moment, and the colouring was probably the most time consuming part of these cards, but overall it didn't take too long to make them, and I ended up with a set of 4 cards that coordinate really nicely together, and they turned out exactly how I had in mind, which is always very nice. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, please do press the like button to let me know. If you didn't, then feel free to press the dislike button. Let me know in the comments below if you've made any simple ink blended backgrounds and what your favourite inks are to use for ink blending. I know people often like to use Distress inks and Oxides, but have you ever tried using any other inks for your blending? If you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, you can subscribe by pressing my logo. There are also a couple of other videos showing on screen now if you'd like to see more from me straight away. Otherwise, I'll thank you very much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video. Bye!